I hear the sounds of your heartbeat. I can hear it now. I can hear it now. I hear the sounds of your heartbeat. I can hear it now. I can hear it now. I hear the sounds of your heartbeat. I can hear it now. I can hear it now.
All right. So for today's Heartbeat episode, a lot of questions have come from around the 1905 project. So did a little bit of digging into the project, had a look at the website, checked some things out, and a number of people were directing me over to Nadine Wellwood, who's on the call for today. And I just happened to bump into her at I Am Albertan meeting on Monday. Had a conversation, invited her out to chat, and just as opportunity happened, like we got this wrapped up inside of a week. So, hey Nadine, thanks for taking some time and hopping onto a live stream with me. And hopefully we can get some questions answered, some concerns gone over, and get an idea of what the project is. So, if I could get you to just take a couple of seconds and introduce who you are, and then we'll hop into a conversation about 1905 committee.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure, and I've learned nothing happens by coincidence. So, us meeting each other on Monday was very good timing, and even news and stuff today. It's a really good day to be having this conversation. So, I'm Nadine Wellwood. I'm a chartered investment manager by trade. I've worked in the finance industry for the last 2 decades. Prior to that, I owned my own investment securities firm. I've owned an aerospace and defense company. Going way, way, way back in my history, I did work in healthcare for a little bit. So, I've got a broad breadth of industry experience, and I got involved politically about 6 years ago when Maxime Bernier and the People's Party of Canada showed up on the scene. And I was so impressed with their policies and their principled approach to government. I said, oh my goodness, I have no more excuses for sitting on the sofa. I have somebody who I can support, get behind, and that's exactly what I've done. And of course, that led me through 2 federal elections now in 2019, 2021, and a Senate race here in Alberta, where I had tremendous support from Albertans, which was amazing, especially considering my name was on the second page. I had to flip it over, go through everybody else's. I was the very last name on the page. And then, of course, I ran for the UCP in Livingston Macleod. Many people are very familiar with that story, to be disqualified by the UCP executive themselves after winning the nomination and having my name put forward by the constituency association there. So I'm sure that will come up in today's conversation around 1905. So that's a brief introduction of Nadine Wellwood. Thank you for having me.
No, that's awesome. Let's hop into that right now. So, because we just seen this again with a couple of other, I think it was on the federal side. So I know it was Wyatt Claypool was one of them. There was another one, and it was the same thing. They went through, did all the work they needed to do, and then were disqualified kind of last minute. So, what led to your disqualification? Was it just some sour grapes over your name, some policies that you had, they just didn't like you, or was it like on the technical side of things?
No, I think realistically, I align very, very well with the constituents in Livingston Macleod. Boys are boys, girls are girls kind of policy. And, my concerns around the Ukraine-Russian war aligned with my constituents. My, comments around COVID, which realistically Danielle Smith herself had spoken numerous times, were perfectly aligned and aligned with my constituents as well. We sold 900 memberships actually in 10 days in just High River alone, which is not a strong Danielle Smith support kind of town. They have long memories in rural Alberta, and a lot of them weren't happy with her decision to have crossed the floor, but were willing to support me. And we did very, very well on gathering memberships and support. And, for no real reason other than I think to bring 1905 committee into the equation right now, I think I'm having a lot of impact outside of the party. But I am who I am. There is no me on 1905 committee and me somewhere else differently. I'm not two different people when I'm talking to two different groups. I just am who I am, and I'm all about accountability, and I'm all about working for Albertans. And I've always put Alberta first in everything that I've done, even ahead of my own needs, of course, ahead of my own needs. And I think the executive knew that, and they didn't want to have to deal with any media criticism, either during an election. Despite the fact that really my views and opinions were no different than Danielle's.
Yeah, it seems really odd. I mean, I'm gonna, I threw my hat in the arena, so to speak, for running for city council yesterday. And and initially, I think that I think some people are a little bit shocked because I'm fairly outspoken, and I don't pull punches. I say bad words, and I'm a little shouty sometimes. So I think that has some people, maybe a little bit concerned over, am I the right person? I know everybody's shooting towards this moderate idea when it comes down to political side of things, but my opinion is moderate fucking got us here. It's not going to get us out of here. So we have to show exactly who we are, and I agree with you. I'm the same person. It doesn't matter if I'm, writing in my Substack, if I'm on Twitter, if you run into me at Safeway, if I'm on a live stream, I'm the same guy. And like I said, I don't pull punches. And you either like me or you don't. And there are a lot of people like there's not a lot of gray in there.
Yeah, and people are afraid to be conservative today, it seems, and that is a real concern for me because we've gone so far left of center. People honestly go, Nadine, you're so far right, and it's like I haven't changed in 30 years. My political policies really haven't changed. My principles haven't changed. But I have watched the right, the conservatives get dragged across center and dragged over to the left as they're chasing the Liberal and the NDP voter. And that's the problem. How about we polish our own policies? How about we stand firm in what we believe in? And you know what? People will be attracted to that. And I think realistically, what we're seeing right now is a lot of people are so disgruntled with the conservative parties because they are literally chasing that vote rather than, draw your line in the sand and say, this is who we are. This is what we stand for. And you know what? Everybody is welcome in this camp. But if I'm going to vote Liberal light, I might as well vote for Liberal. If I'm going to vote, NDP light, I might as well vote for the NDP. We're not really left true conservatives with any real alternative until now. Like, I think COVID was really good for a lot of people because it truly exposed what was going on in the government and the power that they had amassed, and nobody was watching. Nobody was watching, and they got away with this. And so now I think with 1905 in particular, really what we're trying to say to government is that we're watching. We're paying attention. We're watching to what you're doing. A promise made must be a promise kept. We are going to hold you to account. And you know what? We are conservative, but it is also about putting Albertans first and foremost. And so, you know what? You serve us, not the other way around.
And I fully support that. See, I've been on a couple of calls, been at a couple of meetings, and it's always the same thing. It's never the conversations that anybody else wants to have. It's the conversations that they want to have. And even like throughout COVID, I'd hopped onto one of the Zoom town halls with, doesn't matter, he's no longer in his seat. And there was a couple of other MLAs on the call. And, when somebody would ask a question, they would just openly say, no, we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about this. And it's like, well, we didn't show up for a town hall to be talked down to. We showed up at a town hall because we have legitimate concerns and we want those concerns answered. So, and I do agree. I think a lot of people are afraid to be conservative. They're afraid to be shouted down. Whereas it's like, well, why are we embarrassed to hold family values? Why should we be embarrassed to want to keep up, equality by way of equality and not equity? Why should we be afraid to say that DEI is a bullshit concept? It's failed every time it's been tried. They've been working on these same concepts since the early 90s. they push these narratives, this anti-white, anti-straight, well, it's even turning into anti-woman. Again, in the news, we'd seen the Canadian, what was it, the Canadian cycling team, or like one of the Canadian teams, and they openly bragged about it being dominated by trans competitors. What the hell is that about? And why are we supporting that? Why are we taking, people, girls, training them to do their best, keeping them in the mindset that if they're strong, they'll achieve, and then completely cutting them out at the knees and giving it away to boys who have a natural physical advantage? To me, it doesn't make any sense. That and the whole bathroom thing. Bathrooms, change rooms.
Yeah, it's
No.
really unfortunate. This is one topic, and it really doesn't have a lot to do with 1905, but it's one that is very dear to my heart. I have been an athlete my whole life. I was the top female athlete in my school, both junior high and high school, and competed with the boys in practice, because when you reach that level and you are the top of class, I mean, who do you go to next, right? Like, to continue to build on your own skills. So I would often compete with the boys once a week. Just so I could continue to grow my athletic ability. And one of the things in particular as an athlete was I was never going to beat the boys. I was never going to be the best amongst the boys. I mean, when I got one in on the boys, it was like, woohoo, in your face. Right. But that was a rare occasion, not the norm. And so when this whole trans came in, and I mean, I agree, they deserve to have a place in sports, but either compete with the men who they biologically align with, or give them their own category of sport to compete in. But to have to, as a woman, compete against a man who's biologically much stronger than me, more muscle mass, more lung capacity, a bigger heart, all of these things is an unfair advantage. And it shocks me how many women in particular go along with this nonsense. And as for, women in change rooms, I'm like, I'm sorry, but I have a right to my privacy as well. And as a grown woman, it's one thing, but when we start bringing children into the equation, like my daughter is 12 going on 13, you can just imagine, the changes going on with her in her body and in her mind. Now, throw some man parading around as a woman in a change room and is like, I'm sorry, but that just doesn't fly with me. So, when it comes to things like this, the world has certainly changed. It's a very different place, I think, from when you and I grew up. I'm a Gen X. I'm 52 years old. If a man had walked into a woman's change room back then, my father would have been in, grabbing them by the back of the neck. And the police would have been called. Today, the same thing would probably happen, but the person being taken away wouldn't be the man who walked into the change room. It'd actually be my father. That's an astronomical difference in how people perceive reality today. Which I think is a shame. But as true conservatives, I don't think there's anybody out there that truly disagree with what you and I are saying, but yet they're afraid to speak up. And when you're afraid to speak up, you lack that courage. That's how this takes hold, and it's why it's gone on so long. So enough is really just enough. And for me, it's that in so many aspects of politics, because that is where the problem is coming from, but it's because we have not been paying attention, and we just got to get more actively involved. We've got to be bold in our willingness to make a statement, and we have to be true to who we are and our own identity. And, in my opinion, government needs to be open, honest, transparent, right? It needs to do what it says it's going to do. That's called integrity. There's one rule of law that applies to everybody equally. And you know what? They all have a responsibility to speak the truth. And I'm sure we're going to get into net zero, for example, here at some point this evening. And there's a perfect example of why is our government propagating a lie, especially when they know it's a lie.
No, those all good questions. And I mean, I've said the same thing, when it comes to the, the women's change rooms, Gen X myself, I'm 51 years old.
You'll be 52 next year, so don't get too crazy.
Okay. Well, I'll be 52 next year too, so we're probably right in the same area.
Oh no, I said
Uh,
I'm 52. I said you will be 52.
oh,
You
yeah,
know what?
okay.
I'm just ahead of you, right? That's all. You're gonna catch up.
I don't know how that works out. Anyways, yeah, no, when they let men into a girl's change room, and I can, let's go with like swimming, to they let boys into a swimming whatever place. They let boys into these things, but at the same time, if a father wanted to take his daughter in there to change her, that would be unallowed. And this is a relationship, that a father will have with his daughter throughout the course of her life. That father wouldn't be allowed into a change room to help his daughter, 5, 6, whatever the age is, but another grown man, because he calls himself a woman, could. And it's not that I'm offended by transvestites, but I am of the same mind with you. If we want to have them included, and as conservatives, I don't think anybody has a problem including anybody. But there is a right time, there is a right place for all of that to happen. If we want
And
to,
here's
look at washrooms, there's a lot of places that only have a single stall. Go into the bathroom, and when you're not sharing the space with somebody else, nobody cares, right?
Yeah, well, look, even women are very shy around other women. There are a lot of women who change in a private stall rather than private in the open change room. So, it's a very uncomfortable situation for a lot of women, and it's unfair to put them in that situation, in my opinion. But again, if you have concerns, you have to be willing to voice them. Either that or be willing to support the people who do. Because one of the things I have found is that a lot of people don't want to be the one, in the spotlight. But unfortunately, if that's not the case, then you best be willing to support the people who are out there saying what you are what you believe and what you agree with. Because without your support, I can't do what I'm doing. You can't do what you're doing. So, you know what, if you don't have the courage, you don't want to be that one to do it yourself, that's okay. Right. But when you find that person who is willing to say what you want said, you need to support them. And so realistically, that's where we're at. And there's more than enough people to choose from out there that are supportive of activities like this that conservatives can actually get behind. And so my question there to people is, just do that. Get out there, support the people who are out there saying the things that you want said, because people are listening and the voice needs to be loud and the voice does need to be bold. You said and commented on this earlier, politicians don't respond to pretty please. They do not respond to pretty please, despite all the efforts and the attempts. Moderate does not work. You have to get their attention, and how you get their attention is their number one reality is to get reelected or to get elected. So you have to get their attention, and you have to be bold in what you're stating. And hopefully, once you've got their attention, then you put the public pressure on them enough that they actually are forced to take action. Um, you know, Politicians are making great promises. The problem is their follow through is awful. So that is where 1905 again really came about, was because there was a lot of great promises made. There was people who were so hopeful that Danielle Smith was going to be the one who took a tough stance and did the things that were unpopular but needed to be said, needed to be done, and that hadn't happened. And so 1905 really has been the one organization that I'm aware of that said, okay, well, we need to apply some public pressure here to make sure that she follows through on the promises that she's committed to doing.
A certain portion of that comes, I think, a little bit from the Alberta Prosperity Project, and even from Take Back Alberta. They bring in some members, they bring a lot of weight. What makes 1905 committee different than the other 183 groups that are inside of the province right now that seemingly are all saying the same things? Like, what makes 1905 that much different?
Well, I think reality is we have an audience right now. If you look at our social media, if you look at the presence that we have, it is far surpassed, I think, the chatter, especially if you talk about the Premier's office and inside the UCP. Nobody's talking really about TBA. And I think for a lot of people, they came very disenchanted with Take Back Alberta. It was born for one specific reason, and that was getting rid of Jason Kenney. I am not here to get rid of anybody. I am here to promote principled government that is accountable to the people, of Alberta. And in doing that, we have a much broader reach. And I think we have been more bold and more aggressive in calling out the broken promises. And the fact that, I don't care who the leader is and I don't care which party it is. So I have given up on parties and leaders and I've gone back to principles. And so if you're going to make a promise, then you are going to be held to keep that promise. The actions have to follow the words. And I think that's where we're very different. And right now, I mean, I know matter of fact, we are being spoken about in the Premier's office almost on a daily basis. Why? Because we're calling them out. And I haven't seen the Alberta Prosperity Project or TBA do anything that we have specifically done in the way that we have done it. And I think the pressure that has been applied to make change happen, you saw today in the Calgary Herald, Bell wrote an article about tax cuts are now coming. So Danielle said that tax cuts, was one of her campaign promises. And then when the budget came out, said, sorry, we don't have it in the budget. We're not going to do it. Could be as late as 2027. What's one of our policies is pushing on taxes, right? You made a promise, you need to keep a promise. And we've been very aggressive on that. And what did you see today? Well, there was an announcement that said, hey, looks like tax promises are coming after all. Don Braid sent me a little text and went, hey, looks like you guys are having some influence here and are making an impact. I believe we are.
There's a lot of people that are that have said the same things. Like even from just a social media perspective, I align with a couple of other right-minded people, conservatives, and it's been the same thing. So another person that had showed up with us at I Am Albertan on Monday was Tariq, and he'd said the same thing. He came out with his own his report card, I guess is what it is, of Smith in her first year and her promises. And he's been very vocal in saying the same thing, in that if we're not going to approach some of these things that she promised, then she'll get a no confidence vote from him directly.
Yeah, but he's one person, and I know Tariq very well. I call him a friend, and Tariq is very supportive of me and what I've been doing with 1905 committee. But the reality is Tariq is one person, and that was one very good tweet. We have, social media and newsletters and announcements going out to, 100,000 people or more on a regular basis. And that's the difference. One person has an impact, but 1905 committee is not one person. We are a group of individuals all committed to making sure that we can have the best absolutely possible government that is held accountable to his actions. And our reach is far greater than any one individual. We are reaching, hundreds of thousands of conservatives across this province on a very regular basis, if not daily, on a weekly basis.
That brings up a point that, when I first talked about this, and again, these are concerns that are being fed back by my community. You said 1905 is only a few months old.
Yeah.
But you seem to have, getting inside of 100,000 people in a few months is pretty large. So a lot of people are questioning, where did you get your contact lists from?
Well, we have, there's UCP lists that we've been accused of using. We don't have any UCP lists. Any survey or any polling that's ever been done, I mean, they know across this province who's conservative, who's NDP, who's voted liberal. There's lists abound everywhere. And so it's not hard to acquire lists. We have about 300,000 names and addresses, telephone numbers that we can access that have been deemed to be conservative in this province. And we have been polling different people for different reasons, for under different circumstances, with questions and with surveys. And, again, everything that we do is all above board. Everything that we've done, even with our polling and stuff, we're registered as well in our advertising as a third party advertiser. So we've done everything in the right way. We haven't, acquired our lists in any illegal way or, broken any NEAs or anything like that. It's not hard to find. I mean, how does Ipsos go and survey conservatives on their feelings about ABC? How does the Abacus polls find the list of people to go and find specifically for that group based around the question that they have? It's really not that complicated, and it's not that hard to do.
So you're saying that these lists exist online, or they're inside of certain circles?
No, they
For
exist. They're not hard to find. You can go buy lists. I mean, it's really not hard.
and is that what you guys did? You bought these lists?
It doesn't matter how we got the list as far as whether we bought them or we had them from existing groups. We actually had Wexit renamed its website and was able to publish 1905 committee and work with us on that. And of course, we have access to some of those lists. There's 300,000, on our sort of our list right now. And then of course we have people that sign up to our website and stuff every day as well. So it's growing on a regular basis.
Yeah, but I think the concern is that you're reaching out to people that may not have engaged with you to begin with. And there are, I want to say, come out and say it, there are anti-spam laws that prohibit you from, randomly emailing people who never signed up for a service. And I'm not, I'm not here to tell you what the rules are.
Rules. We follow all those rules. We follow all those laws. And if you're doing a survey, the laws are different, obviously, than you're reaching out. If you're doing a public opinion, the rules are different for each and everything. We have lawyers that everything we do, they are vetting to make sure that we are not breaking any laws whatsoever. Obviously, if we're sending something out and people don't want to be a part of it as well, it's hit the unsubscribe button. We don't want to be spamming you by no means. So that's, everything we have done, we've been very careful to make sure that we're falling very, very, very much within the rules and following those rules.
Yeah. On the side of transparency, though, I mean, the same thing that we're expecting from our government. You've acquired lists of names, whether you purchased them or not. You've acquired these lists. They're people that weren't aware that 1905 committee existed prior, and I think that's where the concern comes into play. Everybody's saying, you're going off of the old conservative lists, or that you have some inside help on these things, and that you're reaching out. And
we don't have any, we're not using any UCP lists. We haven't, gone out and taken anything that wasn't ours or wasn't publicly available to everybody. So these are lists that are available to anybody should they wish to, go through and acquire them or find them or use them. Again, that's why we have lawyers, and I've relied heavily on them to be able to guide us to make sure that we're following well within the rules. And that's what we've done. And I know we got a cease and desist letter from the UCP saying that we had illegally, and there's a rumor around that we have illegally obtained their list. And I'm like, no, we have not illegally obtained any lists. And that is a rumor. It's a lie. And our lawyers were happy to send a response back to that. When Rob Smith and the UCP executive, it's my understanding, were faced with our response, it was told, well, the onus is on them to prove. It's like, no, you just made an allegation that you can't prove and is unfounded and is actually untruthful. So this is the problem I have with social media. A lot of people can make claims without really backing up their claim and have no evidence for their claim. I get it. If you got a phone call and, you didn't sign up to the 1905 and you don't like it, it's okay. I get it. But you get phone calls every day with surveys and public opinions. And I know I do. Are they breaking the law? No, they're following the same rules. But the response is like, sorry, I don't wish to participate in your, take me off your list. We'll be happy to do that. If it's going to be, a survey, you don't have to participate in the survey. That's okay. So, everybody wants to know, like, even with TBA, let's take TBA, for example, who right now is having a review of Elections Alberta. And, David Parker didn't want to give up the name of his funding, because that's another issue. People are like, well, who's funding you? Well, grassroots individuals are funding us, $10 here, $20 there, $30 here, $100 there. We do have some donors who have helped us on the advertising. You can go on to Elections Alberta and you'll find their names published right there. Again, following all the rules. So, rather than just make a wild allegation or an accusation or a claim, go find some facts and, go find something that we've done that hasn't followed the rules. Because you won't, because we have been very careful to make sure that we do everything in the proper way and follow the rules in the right way.
I think it's the impression. And I'm going to go off of this because I've been on social media for a while and I've seen what others have been able to amass. So if we look at some of the top people just on a social media type basis, if you look at, let's say, Andy Lee, she's got 150,000 followers and she's been at this since, the convoy. Before that, she had a large following, lost one account, re-signed up. It's kind of gone on successfully for a couple of years. It's taken her a couple of years to get up to 150,000 followers. And, off of that, I know she has some support from, I think it's Rebel. I'm not sure if she still works with Rebel, but she was working with Rebel for, some of that time. And, others, she's worked with other groups to kind of catapult her into that. And these are people that are across the country. You're claiming 300,000 and 3 months, and you've already got funding for lawyers.
I'm not claiming 300,000 in 3 months, Sheldon. So that's not what I said at all. I said we have lists of people that we are able to email, we were able to call. I'm not working from a social media ground zero standpoint. We don't have 300,000 people following us on social media. Never have I said that. And it would probably
you mentioned that you have lists of 300,000. Well,
let's call it there's a list in Alberta, and it's not my responsibility to tell you where to go find that, but there are lists of conservatives. And, the big issue here is the UCP made the accusation wildly that we had broken the law and obtained this list illegally. No, we did not. If there's a list of Albertans, conservatives, that is publicly available, and you can go find it, right? But that's not my onus to tell you where it is, but you can go find it. Then the reality is, are some of those UCP members going to get a phone call? Most likely, they are going to get a phone call. But that doesn't mean we have done anything wrong. We followed all the CRTC rules. We've done everything in the right way. And, people don't like it. I get it. People are suspicious. I get it. That's okay. But, to make a wild accusation again, and I'm not saying we have 300,000 people following us on social media. It would probably take us years to get 300,000 people to follow us on social media. It's a tough thing. You're competing against the algorithms. I know because I only have 5,000 people that follow me on YouTube and my social media platform. Not that I actively pursue that or actively work with that. I just do that personally. So I get the challenges. So that's not what I said. And again,
no. But there's a large
here. But the reality is, we have access to information, as do everybody else in the public domain. They just have to take the time to go find it.
Yeah. And I guess the impression is that, and I know what this is about because I do have one of my own petitions that are going on right now. And there's a lot of people that will look at the petition to see what information they have to put on it and then refuse to be a part of the petition because it requires them to surrender a cell phone number or an email address or their personal information. And a lot of people are comfortable more inside of an anonymous space because of maybe this exact reason. They don't want their information pushed out to other groups who have the ability to just pick up the phone or, find them online and do the same thing. It's hard to call yourself a grassroots group when that's not exactly what you are. Grassroots is you plant a seed, you grow a field. What you have,
we are planting plenty of seeds.
You bought a field. No, I'm not saying that you haven't. Right? But you're starting off with a field and working your way backwards. And then that to me,
just because we make a phone call doesn't mean people support us. For me, when I say grassroots, I'm talking about the people who we make the phone calls to, we make the emails to, and they go, oh my gosh, yes, this is amazing. How do I get involved? And we've had thousands of people want to get involved. We've had tens of thousands of people, sign up. We've got, people coming to the AGM. I mean, that's where the grassroots comes from. It's like we're planting seeds. We're putting the information out there. We're making an offer to people. Hey, look, here's what we're doing. If you like it, please help us get involved. Make a donation, volunteer, come to the AGM, get, more information, like us on social media. And that is very much grassroots. If you notice, as board of directors at the moment, we did have 4 at one point. There's 2. There's myself and Carol Volk at the moment. We are looking for more directors. But you just finished saying yourself, you need to be bold, right? I mean, I'm not looking to do what everybody else has done. I'm looking to do something very organized, very professional, and push pretty hard on making change happen. And you know what? If people don't like that, that's their prerogative. I understand. But the reality is, it doesn't make it wrong, and it certainly doesn't make it illegal. And privacy is a very big challenge today. There is absolutely no doubt about it. It is very difficult because no matter where you go, somebody somewhere, everywhere has your information. I worked in an aerospace and defense company. They had everything, including my blood type, my this, my that, all the details. And they knew the name of my firstborn child and before I did, so that's the reality of the world that we live in. And I know a lot of people are very protective of it, but the reality is, I mean, I've been around for 52 years, even though in the last 3 years, I've gotten more protective of my information. I haven't changed my phone number in 20 years. So is it hard to find? No, it's not really hard to find. There's lots of lists out there that are available that people have bought and sold over years that have been compiled. And I'm sure my name sits on many of them.
Yeah. And I don't want to beat this dog to death. So just, as a base understanding, people that are concerned about you using the conservative list, you're not, but you are using a list.
Oh, we're using many lists. Absolutely. Like, there's no denying that. People didn't just hand us over their information. A lot of people did. But, again, there's a lot of public lists that are out there that are available to everybody in the exact same way.
Yeah. And again, I'm going off of the concerns that I have from the people that, that want. I'd heard about the 1905 project. It was like something that would slip past me. And then a lot of others were coming to me and asking me the questions. And that's why I'm kind of digging into it. So it's, it's not me making the accusations. It's, I put the information out there because of exactly this. We want to clear up any misconceptions if there are, to keep the lies from being spread. If somebody doesn't like me, if somebody doesn't like you, that's fine. And I think we had a quick conversation about this yesterday. And I'm okay if somebody calls me a name, but when somebody starts smearing me online, it's not a very positive thing. A lot of times I can get past it, and I really don't care about that. But I mean, when you have something that's that you're passionate about, this is your baby, this is your beauty, and when you're moving direction, and it's for the importance of all Albertans for what you're doing, then you want to make sure that these misconceptions are actually cleared up, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, for me, I think we've cleared that up. We've made it very clear that everything we've done is within the guidelines and following the rules. And, we have lawyers that are engaged to make sure that we walk straight and narrow on that. We've done everything we can to protect the information that we have. Obviously, we're not sharing that with others. But the reality is, I get a little tired of people that just want to constantly, beat up and bash. And it's like, you know what, guys, go find somebody else to do that with, because I really don't care. I have a very thick skin. I'm very tough in the individual. I want open, honest, and transparent. Absolutely. But that also means protecting the people who give you the information. So, as a good journalist, you don't give away all your sources, right? If somebody is, paid for something, then I'm not going to hand that over to somebody else. So, this is how business is run, but business is run ethically and honestly. And people just come out with an emotional response. Well, I don't like it. Okay, I get it. I understand. And there are things you can do to end it, right? Just unsubscribe if you don't want to be a part of it. You don't want to partake in our survey, just don't partake in our survey. That's okay. But for a lot of people, how else do you get the word out, right? It's called advertising. And we've been doing that as well, significant amount of advertising. And we're going to be doing more advertising. And so, that as well as drawing more attention to the 1905 committee and what we've been doing. So, there's different ways to get the word out, to share the information. And we tried to get the information out in front of people so they themselves have the ability to say, I want to be a part of this, or I don't want to be a part of this. And if it's something that they don't want to be a part of, then just don't participate. Again, conservatives, here we go. Let's beat up on each other. If we're doing something right, we're having a good impact. And all we want to do is drag the other party down. And it's like, just don't participate.
No, that's exactly right. You don't have to be a part of anything, really.
Exactly.
So the 1905 committee, there was other questions or concerns that came in around what 1905 is and what it stands for.
Yeah, so 1905 is obviously the year that Alberta became a province. And it's so funny because I've had people go, you need to change the name. It's the Russian Revolution. It's all of this stuff. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Anybody, I think, realistically, who is being honest, who typed in 1905 Alberta onto Google, if they weren't sure, they're going to get, it's the year Alberta became a province. And then I've had criticisms like, well, you want to go back to 1905? Alberta was an awful place to be in 1905. And this is obviously politically driven. And how I came up with 1905, when we were having the discussion and we were sitting around the table trying to find a name, and we were talking about, well, in 1905, the province said, well, wait a minute. What if we could do it all over again? What would it look like? What would we do differently? So it became, if in 1905, and we had a white sheet of paper today to do it all over again, what are the changes we would make? Right? What is it that we would expect of our government? What is it that we would demand that our government be held to? Those were the questions that came up, and thus 1905 committee is what stuck.
And so those principles that you came up with, what are those principles? Is that the open, honest transparency that we'd expect from our government?
Yeah, so I had an inaugural meeting back in June. I had about 30 people in the room, and I obviously identified what I thought are my principles, but I didn't share that with anybody. And the homework for everybody in the room before they came to the meeting was, what are 5 to 7 principles that are absolutely non-negotiable? Things that we cannot make excuses for, that we cannot bend or compromise on. Open, honest, transparent. That was a big one. Speak the truth was another big one. Do what you say you were going to do. Integrity. That was huge. One rule of law that applied to everybody equally. So those were the key principles that we in the room, all of us, agreed were non-negotiable. And so those are the principles that 1905 committee has adopted as its guiding. That's our lighthouse. So, the seas are going to get rough. We know that, right? People are going to like what we do, not like what we do. But we always have to come back to the principles to steer the ship. So without that, I think it's very easy to get adrift in a rough sea. But if we always have that lighthouse to come back to, are we being open? Are we being honest? Are we being transparent? Are we speaking the truth, right? One rule of law that applies to everybody. Then I think, for us, that's how we're going to keep ourselves accountable as well.
So the same principles you'd expect out of the government are the same principles that you hold the 1905 committee to.
Absolutely. And yeah. For us, our government, in my opinion, has a higher standard of care than a private organization should have, because they are representing us, Albertans, the public. They are using public dollars, tax dollars. When I spend my money, that's one thing. But when the government spends my money, in my opinion, that is something very different, right? They should be held to a much higher standard than what we are even held to.
No, and that's absolutely it. And I mean, if we look at a couple of the incidents that we've seen inside of Calgary, we've seen some really poor decisions on where funds have been spent. At the ABC thing last night, somebody sat down and broke down how City Council canceling the First Arena deal cost every household inside of the city of Calgary an additional $700 by having to renegotiate the deal, and that was all on the hands of Gondak. Another decision is to put like $5 million into the new logo for the city, but at the same time we're ignoring the infrastructure that's causes multi millions of dollars to fix. That they're already taking the taxes on that. They're already charging us for the services, but they're not maintaining the infrastructure. So and even most recently the Jasper incident. We've got billions of dollars going overseas. We're throwing money into this vacuum of nothingness for EV batteries. We're at $40 billion for cars and batteries that nobody can afford. One, nobody wants in Canada. And when I say nobody, there's a very small percentage of people that want these things. And the government is pushing us in towards these things. So they've supposedly invested $40 billion into this. An investment for me actually has a return, whatever that return looks like. But 20 years from now, if they break even, they'll be happy with that. Well, that's not an investment. Stop saying you're investing money when you're not. So they pissed away these funds, gave the Ukraine a bunch of money. They're having the conversation over, the funding for the UN. Meanwhile, our forest management is abysmal, and that's caused, a heritage place like Jasper, Alberta, to burn to the ground because it hasn't been maintained. So
just even
yeah,
a fire protection border around Jasper would have avoided all of this. And, it's been a true mismanagement of resources. And I don't disagree with you. Federally, provincially, even municipally, you're seeing it. Bike lanes, I'm sorry, but Calgary is under, how many feet of snow for 8 months of a year? Do we really honestly should be prioritizing bike lanes over our water lines and sewers? Probably not. But it boils down to government has lost its way from a standpoint of it no longer understands what its role actually is. It's become a social justice activist and a climate change activist, as opposed to, your role as the mayor is to run the infrastructure and to manage your city, right? It's not about to be a social activist warrior. And, what did Gondak do? Come out and said, well, we're in a climate emergency, day 2 of her election. This is ridiculous. But and it doesn't matter which government, that's municipal. We could talk about provincial. When Danielle scrapped the flat tax for gasoline for Albertans, that was a huge help. That saved the people of Alberta hundreds of dollars. Every time they went to the tank to fill up their car, that was a huge plus. And Alberta has some of the highest taxes on fuel of all the provinces. And so when she put that back on, and then to come out and say we have a surplus, it's like, well, why aren't you doing more? Like, let's remove that, keep it off until we can kind of bring affordability back under control in this province. So, federally, there's a ton of issues because Justin Trudeau, budgets balance themselves and he doesn't have a clue. Let's be honest. It's not him running this country. There's people behind him that are telling him what to say and what to do, because I personally don't think that he's capable of even some of the decisions that he's made.
Yeah, I agree. Don't even get me started. Hey, we do have a question, or a couple of questions coming in, so I'm just going to kind of beat them out here. So does 1905 have any current MLAs involved from Chinook Gal? So are there
No,
any, do you take any guidance, or have you chatted with any MLAs?
Oh, of course we have chatted with lots of people, but none of them have, come out and said that they support us or, that they none of them are actively involved with what we're doing. I speak to everybody and anybody who's willing to listen. And I listen to anybody who has any feedback or comments that can share as to how we get to where we want to go. And that's accomplish our goals and objectives. We've got 5 policies. We'd love to see them pushed through. And that's not even including, the climate change narrative and or some of the COVID stuff. So, for us, it's about, please do share your thoughts and comments with us. We love hearing them. And as far as MLAs, we don't have any direct involvement with the UCP or the government. I don't think they're very happy with us right now. I'm sure some of the MLAs are actually smiling in the background on their own, going, yes, good, keep the pressure on. I have heard that a few times indirectly, but the UCP, all this party politics, they keep a very, very tight control around their MLAs. I'd say right now, the one MLA for the UCP who's probably been the most bold in his actions has been Eric Bouchard with his injection of truth. And I know the UCP wasn't very happy with that as a party, and he did it anyway. And I'm like, good on him. That's what we need more of. People who are willing to say, hey, to hell with re-election. I just need to do what's right for the people of this province and what's right according to my own code of conduct and my own ethics and my own standards, and move forward with it. I wish more MLAs would do that.
No, and I'm of the exact same mind, and especially in constituencies where we've lost some seats. So I was going over this with a couple of friends today, and they're struggling inside of their board. They believe it's kind of defunct. It's not very active. And when the idea of an Alberta pension plan rolled out, Eric's group, again, they did a phenomenal job in hosting a town hall, filled up a theater with people, brought out a couple of speakers. Shane Getson was out there, Tanner Naday was out there. So you could get a little bit of information, and there was some time to go out for a drink and have these conversations afterwards, instead of trying to, have everybody to raise their hands and stuff. So if there were other constituencies like that, if some of these seats that we've lost had some more activity inside of them, there'd be more Albertans that are aware of it. Instead, we have this conversation that's now 6 months old, and 6 months of NDP advertising against it, screeching on social media, emailing out all of their people. And now if we do go for a vote on the APP, there's been so much bad press about it from the one side, we can't even have the conversation. I think that if an APP vote went through right now, I think we'd lose it.
Yeah, so I was the one who started the Alberta First Pension. At the time, we just called it the Alberta Pension. It wasn't Alberta First. That's been renamed since Mitch Sylvester has gotten involved. But the truth around that is, Danielle came out with a big splash, lots of pretty words, very strong statements, and pushed for the Alberta Pension Plan. And then you're right, she went silent. And when a void occurs like that, well, then what happens? It gets filled. But it got filled by the NDP. And the concerns around the pension and the Canada Pension Plan, people believe that it works. Well, there's, and I'm very clear. I did an hour-long presentation, and then we would do Q&A, question and answers for people. And we went all across this province. And there's 2 big concerns that came out of that. One was this false sense of security around the Canada Pension Plan. Well, my presentation, it's easy to deal with that. I can show you where the follies are, where the problems lie, and how and why Alberta can do it so much better. But the one thing that I can't really deal with, except for the fact that I can say I share the same concern for people, is that, well, I don't want this to become a slush fund for the government, right? And Danielle Smith is going to take our pension. And that was the number one concern for most Albertans, was they did not want to see this, influenced by government, come under the Premier's office, where they have control, that they can use it for pet projects and to fund, other businesses. And here's the thing. We've already had a referendum. We had a referendum on equalization. And 62% of Albertans said end equalization tomorrow, right? Done. Here's the truth.
Is that something that the provincial governments can actually opt out of?
No,
without going through the separation.
They can't opt out of equalization, but we've already had a referendum. the point that I'm trying to make here is that the Alberta pension plan is an equalization payment to Canada. It just goes to the Canada pension plan. Albertans are yet again sending $3 to $5 billion each and every year above and beyond what they are actually receiving back to the Canada pension plan, right? And how about we keep that here at home? Why don't we keep that extra $3 to $5 billion here at home? So why did Danielle put Bill 2 into place that said the government had to have a referendum? The government in Alberta does not need a referendum to pull back from the CPP. All she had to do was sign saying, hey, we're giving our 3 years notice. It was done. If she chose to have a referendum, then by all means, have a referendum. But there is no legal requirement for her to have made it a law to say that we had to have one. And in fact, we did have a referendum on equalization that showed 62% of Albertans would prefer to keep the money here, home, and deal with it here rather than give it to Canada.
Okay. On the equalization side of things, I can see where some people might not conflate the two, equalization and Canada pension plan, but you do make a really good point in that. One question that I'd had texted over to me is, who else are the directors of 1905? It's not really clear. So you talked about that, and I'm on the website right now, and it's yourself and it's Carol Voke.
Yep.
So those are the two directors of the 1905. Okay, perfect. Now, if there are any more questions, feel free to type them in as we kind of go through this thing into the comments section if you're on Twitter or Facebook or whatnot.
And Sheldon, if I can just say one more thing to you on the Alberta pension plan, because that is one of our policies that we're pushing very hard to make sure that Alberta does get its own pension plan. The second concern that people had was this, not trusting the government. A lot of people do not understand the difference between an Alberta pension plan and the Heritage Trust Fund. Well, Danielle did not reduce our taxes as promised because she was going to add the surplus to the Heritage Trust Fund, right? Which she said we wouldn't touch for 25 years. And then just, recently she's made the announcement that she's going to bring the Heritage Trust Fund, or she's musing with the idea to bring the Heritage Trust Fund under the Premier's office, and she's going to use that money to fund businesses that are deemed too risky for the banks to finance. That literally played directly into the hands of the concerns for people who said that, they did not want to go along with an Alberta pension plan. Why? Because they didn't trust the government. And she just handed that to them with her announcement around the Heritage Trust Fund. So again, just really poor judgment, in my opinion. The Heritage Trust Fund is about for all Albertans. In my opinion, that's Albertans' money. That's not the Premier's money. It can't be directed to business. In my opinion, government has no business being in business. There should be no subsidies. If it's a great idea, the private industry will fund it. And then I've had people have come back and said, but the oil and gas companies, they can't. You know what? You know how junior oil and gas companies have been funded for decades? They've been funded through private equity. There are people out there, if it's a good idea and there's a profit to be made, trust me, they are all over it. They are happy to fund it. And if we want to make it easier, how about we reduce the regulations that the government have put into place? The obstacle for a lot of that funding, the biggest, is government itself. If government would just get out of the way, there would be more than enough capital available to be able to fund these projects.
No, that makes total sense. So two of the principles that you're really working on here, one is the reduction in taxes, which has been somewhat announced, and the other is the Alberta pension plan. You said there's 5 of them that you're working towards. What are the other ones?
Yeah, so we have one on constitutional convention. It's probably the toughest one to work with, but everybody, I think, in Alberta understands we're not really going to get a fair deal with Ottawa. So we do have to push very hard back on Ottawa to make sure that they stay in their lane, and that provincially, whatever jurisdiction we have, we take it back. So Danielle was very clear when she got elected that her mandate was to kind of follow through on some of these fair deal panel ideas. And, we do need to work with the provinces on both sides and across this country. Like right now, you're seeing with equalization, Newfoundland and Labrador is not happy with equalization payments. Saskatchewan, BC has gotten vocal about equalization payments. We're not the only one. And so if we're going to make change, and you're absolutely right, Danielle did go quiet on APP because Pierre Poilievre does not want to see the Canada Pension Plan changed and Alberta drop out. So I don't disagree with you, Marty, up north. That's a very fair statement. And so on the Constitutional Convention, we've got to work with other provinces, to build support, to really give the provinces back the power that they actually do have. And again, the Alberta Pension Plan is exactly that. That is something that Alberta could do tomorrow. It is something well within our control, our ability, our provincial jurisdiction, and it is something that we should do. So, in our policy on that, we're about repeal Bill 2. Yes, we don't need a referendum, just do it. Now, will she do that? Probably not. But if we push further to the one side, let's hope she will at least at a minimum have a referendum. But there's no point in having a referendum that we're going to lose. So we have to put the resources, the dollars, the cents behind it. And, I've had very effectively, I've had people show up with masks. NDP, teachers union at my APP meetings, Alberta Pension Plan, leave going, yeah, you're absolutely right. This is the best thing that we could do for Alberta, but they still don't trust Danielle Smith.
No, and I don't think that Smith's necessarily done anything wrong to gain this distrust as much as, the crossing the floor thing, that was kind of big. But aside from that, for everybody to call her untrustworthy, I think that a lot of that's being fed by the left, perpetuated by the media, and then it's falling inside of the conservative circles. Now, I think the conservatives do have some issues. They got to circle their own wagons, because it seems to me why, even as a conservative party, we're somewhat divided. We still have some of the old guard standing by. Some of them have been punted out. But we still need to have that strength. We still need to kind of keep unified. Now, C said that she believes that, or asked a question, what's the difference between Poilievre and Trudeau? And I don't think that really involves this conversation, but feel free to chime in on that, because, with your thoughts, if you choose.
Well, again, that's a federal issue, and 1905 is truly committed to trying to change things closer to home and focus on holding our provincial leaders to account for what, the promises that they have made. So a little bit on that was, one of the biggest arguments and concerns I get, and it trust me, it is a concern. It's a very big concern. It's a valid concern. It's like, well, we don't need Nenshi to win the next election. We don't need another NDP government. I said, but my response to that is, why is it that we do not want to see an NDP government? And I'm going to send that one back to you, Sheldon. So in your own view of the NDP, why are they bad for Alberta?
Well, they call themselves the pro-worker party, but it's not. It's a coalition with unlimited amounts of wealth that they can spend on shifting a narrative. And what we've seen, and this is something that's bothered me on the federal side of things, is that they passed this no scab law legislation, and it was unanimous inside of the 338 for anybody that voted. So it passed with a majority, but what that basically does is it gives unions absolute power, and inside of those unions, we have civic unions. So when we're looking at the increase, the 42% increase in government employees since Trudeau's been in office, plus the $20 billion that he spent on consulting over the last year, $20 billion in consulting, while increasing the size of the workforce by 42%. Those 42%, from what Canadians see, are, the revenue agency, Canada Revenue Agency, and I'd seen people commenting on this a number of different times, in that just trying to get through to Canada Revenue Agency is almost impossible. And I think it was Kirk Lubomov that brought it out, and he said, here's the tip on how to get through this. He says, you press 1 for English and you wait, and you don't understand the person that's on the other side of the phone. He said, but the trick is if you press 2 for French, you're going to get somebody that's actually bilingual that will speak proper English. But a lot of these people are working from home. They don't want to go back to the office for that third day. If they decide to walk out, they're holding us hostage. Right now in Ontario, and I'm not sure, I've been really busy over the last couple of days, haven't paid much attention to it, but the LCBO went on strike. And it's like you said, government has no place in business. Of course, they wanted to get into liquor. They wanted to get into selling pot. They thought they could make, scandalous amounts of money that would take care of the revenue that they're trying to get rid of out of Alberta from our oil. They lost money selling dope. You have 15-year-old kids that can hawk this shit on street corners and to their friends, make fat coin. But we have some of the smartest people that they're going to try and put in these places that sold dope and fucking lost their shorts on it. Like, it's embarrassing. They're government employees. The LCBO, when we had a look at some of the salaries that are paid for their warehouse workers, the starting salary is at $120,000 in some of these cases. Or there's some of these people that are legitimately on a sunshine list. They work at the friggin' liquor store. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to put down any single position. There are people that need to fill all positions. And, if I started putting down people at liquor stores, then, my vendors would be awfully excited and, may not be as kind to me when I came back. So it's not that I'm putting down the job. It's not that I'm putting down the people. Inside of Alberta, this has been privatized for, 20 years now?
I know, but so let's bring it back to Alberta, though. Like, there's a lot of federal things that are going on, and I mean, I understand that. No, there's no Albertan that really has any issue or concern about what Danielle has been doing with the government. Probably she could be doing a little more, but the fear here always boils down to, well, we can't allow another NDP government. So my question, to be more direct, is why? Like, what specifically is it about the NDP that we do not want? And so you hit on some of them, because it typically means a much bigger government, right?
That's right.
With a much bigger budget spending, right?
With a much bigger workforce, and they use that to perpetuate power. Right. So if you look at what's happening inside of Alberta Health Services right now, is a prime example of what unions have taken over. And now, when Smith's trying to make some changes inside of these things, we have doctors and the nurses and the unions that are literally funding the anti-campaign. So one of the documents that I'd come across that was sent to me by one of the nurses in my subscribers list is that it showed that $200,000 from one of the nurses' unions was going to fund. It actually was being sent to the AFL, so to Gil McGowan, who ran for leadership of the NDP. One union gave him $200,000 to be anti-Alberta pension plan. Yep. Now, so why do I have a problem with the NDP?
A big issue. I have a solution for unions. Nobody wants to hear it. But you know what? Unions, again, should be a choice, right? There should be a work law that's put into place where, if you belong to a union, it should be a choice. It shouldn't be mandatory. And the other one for me is, how about, you write the check each and every year. You physically have to write the paycheck to the union, and then you decide for yourself whether or not you're getting the value for that. That's, to me, how you, in my opinion, how is an easy fix for unions. Now, again, federally, the paychecks come off. The union dues come off people's paychecks automatically. They're not even asked whether they want to belong or whether or not they agree with the amount or there's any negotiation. Union leaders get paid more in this country than the prime minister does. So there's huge issues around that. But I want to get very specific on the province. And people say to me all the time, well, we don't want the NDP. And I'm like, well, why don't we want the NDP? So I made a list of why I don't want the NDP. Right? I was hoping you would tell me the list, but here's the list. It typically means bigger government with more spending. It typically means taxes go up. It typically right now is a very globalist agenda. So, climate change, we're hearing this all over the place. Carbon's bad, net zero. It's a socialist healthcare problem. It's a socialist education in our universities. And so I have a question. What happens, and who's going to hold our government to account when they're doing these things? because every second sentence out of Danielle's mouth is net zero, right? When she was campaigning for the leadership, she made it very clear. Canada is already carbon neutral. We're a carbon sink. And now it's net zero by 2050. It's like, what changed? LGBTQ issues, right? This province, I think, largely believes that boys are boys, girls are girls, keep them separate, acknowledge the fact that, trans certainly have their rights, but those rights don't get to infringe upon my rights as a woman, right? The healthcare system, AHS, again, she was very strong when she first came out on that, and I'm going, there's really been very little done on it. Education, what happened to this idea of a voucher? I homeschool my daughter. I would love to have my $13,000 that I could go and gather up 8 to 10 other parents and say, hey, let's pool our $13,000 each and let's go hire ourselves a teacher. And what teacher in their right mind wouldn't take the $130,000, go spend maybe 30 of that, I highly doubt it would be that much, on materials for these children. The other 100,000 is theirs in a salary. Homeschooling a child, maybe 3 hours a day, maybe. And then they take it an hour, maybe an hour and a half to do whatever paperwork they need to do. Their day is cut in half. They're getting paid well, small group. The possibilities are endless. Why do we need to be building more schools? We don't. We just need to give parents more choice. And Danielle was all about that. And we've gone quiet on that. Big government under Danielle Smith. Unfortunately, we have the biggest government we have ever had in the history of Alberta and the biggest budget, right? Taxes haven't gone down, right, as promised, although now it looks like, I think 1905 is having some impact. And there was some news today that, hey, the tax cuts might be coming. But hey, it took how much pressure to make that happen? So, corporate welfare, she appointed Alison Redford to a Crown corporation, probably the most detested woman in all of Alberta. She could have put Rachel Notley in there and probably wouldn't have been as controversial. Things like hockey tickets are not a big deal. Everybody expected a premier to be at the hockey games. It's how things are done. Why are they shrouded in secrecy? And why are we creating more doubt in Albertans' minds that, by accepting offers like this, which is ethically, I have to take ethics courses every year to keep my designation. I think the government should have to do the same, because it was a blatant, obvious, I know somebody offered a box, but you should have said thank you, but no thank you. And if you were going to accept it, get out ahead of it and go, look, we were generously offered this box. We're going to accept it. Saves the taxpayer money. But this is corporate welfare and corporate cronyism. And these are all the reasons we don't want the NDP. So what do we do when our own government is doing it? This is the problem I have, is that if our government is doing it, we have to be able to call it out the same way we would if it was the NDP that did it.
No, and I 100% agree. Holding our government accountable doesn't matter what color their shirt or ties are. I think we're all on board with that. The hockey thing, I think that one's been beat to death for really no good reason. There isn't a politician on the planet that hasn't gotten some concert tickets or some hockey games. So, if we're going to infight about something that lazy when we have real issues going on, it's not worthy of the conversation as far as I'm concerned.
No, but what ends up happening is everything ends up piling on, right? One bad judgment leads to another bad judgment, leads to another announcement, and it creates distrust in the public's mind. And that becomes the challenge. And Danielle was very outspoken when she was on the radio and when she was leader of the Wild Rose. She was about smaller government, smaller spending. She called out corporate welfare. She agreed business had no business, or government had no business being in business. And it's now that she's premier, the language has changed substantially. And I think for a lot of people, that's the concern. Why? When she was at the Tucker Carlson event, one of her comments was, well, I've had my wings clipped. I found that very disturbing because you know what? I didn't elect somebody else. I elected Danielle Smith based upon what I knew of her and the promises she made. So if somebody is clipping her wings, I would love for her. And Danielle, if you or anybody that, from your caucus is watching, if you have had your wings clipped, please, I would love to know who has clipped them. Because I think every Albertan would love to know if there's somebody standing in your way from reducing taxes, from reducing the immigration, from you following through on the promises that you made. Hey, you let us know.
No, that's fair enough. Because these are the promises that were made, and if there are people standing in the way of those promises, then Albertans have the right to know. And it's like you said, a lot of these people are afraid of having these conversations. So I even know for like the Injection of Truth event, there were more MLAs that were supposed to show, and then they didn't end up showing. And I know in certain circles, they will have conversations, and we do these little social media outings, and there are some people that have shied away from these things, where others have embraced it. They've come out, they've enjoyed some time with us. When we were in Edmonton, we had 18 MLAs, and we hope to do a couple more of these things. Will we get all the same people? Will they be able? That's the whole idea, is to make these people accessible so we can have the conversations instead of them hiding behind a conservative banner while they're triggering against our wishes. They calling us lunatics, or calling us the freedom people, or segregating boards by this one's freedom and this one's old guard, or this one's legacy, or whatever. When I hear those terms being thrown around, it pisses me off, because when I see our government pandering more to the left than it is to the people that got them in their seats, and then they still have the audacity to call us names or to try and hush us into corners, it's very upsetting. Knowing who these people are, knowing that they're not necessarily our friends, or knowing that those are the people that we have to talk to are the big conversations that we need to have. So I know there are some talks about going directly at the ministers. So instead of directing everything towards Smith, because she's only one person, why don't we go towards the ministers? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, the reality is, if she will be bold enough to call out where the issues lie, I will be bold enough to make the statements. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But unfortunately, she is the premier. She's the one who made the promises. She's the one who is ultimately accountable to the people to follow through on them. Unfortunately, we do have a divided United Conservative Party. It is not unified. There is old guard there. But again, Danielle made it very clear that those individuals were off limits. They could not be challenged in their nominations. And that was something, again, she promised. She made it very clear when she was running for the leadership. Hey, if the public and people want those nominations reopened, she would reopen them. And she never did. So those individuals are still there. Why? Because she allowed them to stay there. So now, you know what? She has to deal with the consequences of that. So, for me, when I look at all of these things, we can make a lot of excuses, but the reality is there were things that could have been done, should have been done, that did not happen. And she has to accept responsibility for that. With respect to the ministers and the other individuals that are there, hey, let me know who the obstacles are. I will be happy to, dig in, and let's find out how to remove those obstacles and how to make those promises a reality. Why? Because it's the best thing to do for Albertans. And you know what? We're happy to provide support where it's deserving. But the hard part is we're going to call out where, the promises have been broken and more work needs to be done. Why? Because in the end, only public pressure is, it's the only thing that I've seen that's been effective to get politicians to actually follow through and take action.
Yeah, no, and that's again, there's nothing wrong with your thoughts on that. The one thing is she did run on a set of policies and a set of principles, and we do understand the length of her term. She's 1 year into 4 years, and everybody's wanting everything done today. Do you think that's how government should operate? Just kind of throw everything that they have as ideas into the first year, and then try and settle things out over the balance? Or do you think that these things should be implemented in the way that they make the most amount of sense?
Well, they need to be implemented in a way that makes sense, but all the policies that we are pushing absolutely 100% make sense, that they could have been done, should have been done. They just weren't a priority for her, in my opinion. And the reality is, if you're going to make bold change, and some of these are bold changes, they are going to be done in the first year. And everyone says, well, she's only been there a year. But no, she's been premier for almost closer to 2 years now, because she did have that term where Kenny, and I know it was during, building up the support then and worrying about election, right? But got to get elected, got to get elected, got to get elected. That's the number one fear, right? That's the number one objective for every politician. And, when the pressure is applied, like I said, 1905, we wanted tax reduction. We've been calling it out. And today announcement was made, instead of 2027 now, looks like it's coming much sooner. Again, pretty words, lots of promises. We're not taking our foot off the gas until it actually happens. Because why? We've had lots of words spoken. And Danielle is a great orator. She is very well spoken. But the problem is the actions have to follow the words, right? So until we actually see it happen, we're going to keep our foot on the gas and make sure that we continue to apply the pressure to make sure that it does happen. Rob Smith came out and said, oh, it's been too soon. Legislation takes time. It takes at least a year to go through. That's an absolute lie. An absolute lie. And I can prove it. Look at the Sovereignty Act, right? That happened in what? 3 weeks? Maybe a month. It became legislation. So to come out and say that it takes a year longer for legislation like this to happen, that's not true. What it takes is political will and the push to make it happen. The trans legislation that she came out with, a lot of people were very upset, said it didn't go far enough. I sent her a text and said, you know what? I think this is a legacy moment. I think you've done something good here. May not be perfect, but it's a very, very, very bold statement. I'm like, congratulations. And what's happened with it? Nothing. Hasn't even passed through first reading. Rob Anderson has come out and said, oh, well, it'll be in line with international standards. So well, to me, that sounds like backpedaling. What does that mean exactly? What part of this are you changing from what she said to what's actually going to show up as far as legislation goes? So again, you need to prioritize. And I mean, that one in particular received a standing ovation at the last UCP AGM. So to not have made that a priority to make it happen, to me, again, just shows poor judgment. So, I know you have to pick and choose, but there are some things that you promise. There are some things that, people are really, really in need of knowing that the government has got their back and is going to do the right thing. Immigration in this province, she rolled out the welcome mat. Alberta is full. Let's be honest. We just do not have the capacity, infrastructure-wise, housing-wise. Everything has just become so unaffordable, and we cannot afford to add to the problem. We need to just put the brakes on, and we need to rebuild. We need to catch up to where we can start reasonably accepting immigration done in the right way. And that's not an open door policy. And part of the problem we have too is not even in migration, it's migration. Danielle rolled out the carpet, said, hey, anybody from Ontario, anybody from BC, come on over, you're more than welcome. You know what? They're coming. But the problem is they're also bringing their NDP ideology and their woke ideology with them. And without a strong conservative, I think, at the helm, she's going to have a heck of a time winning the next election. Just because we've got a lot of people that are coming here that are not coming here because they want to continue. People forget why Alberta was affordable, because we do have strong conservative values, right? We like to balance budgets. We like a strong economy, and we fought for that. We don't fall under the blanket socialist Marxist ideology. But when you've got people coming from Ontario and people coming from BC, flip a coin. Half of them are coming, and that's how they're going to vote. So that is a problem, I think, from an election standpoint, she should be thinking about as well. And so I think if you're going to move here, please come here, with the right mindset. We are Albertan. You were at the I Am Albertan. What does it mean to be Albertan? What is it, the values, the core principles that we share as Albertans that should be non-negotiable?
Yeah. I mean, being an Albertan means something separate to all of us, and especially the people that were born here. But we've seen that those Albertan values can actually be passed on to, the people that have arrived in our country. So, I mean, it's not independent. And I don't think that we, it's easy to get into the weeds on these conversations. Who do we allow into the province? There's no question. There's too many people. And I've said that time and time again. We don't have a housing crisis. We have too many fucking people came too fast for us to be able to accommodate. But it wasn't a housing crisis. if we would have grown organically, there is no crisis. We didn't. And it's not we didn't. It's policies that were put in place by the federal government on the their what was it, the Century Act, or the Century idea, where they want to have 100 million people by 2100. That's
Danielle
where this is
herself
coming
has
from.
said she'd like 10 million people in this province in the next 20 years. So she's part of that problem.
I didn't hear that. I'm not going to say that you're a liar. I didn't hear that. But no, the immigration thing. I mean, those are the largest things that we need to focus on. Is if we throttle back on the number of people coming here, we can salvage what we do have for a healthcare system, what we have for our school systems, recover what we deem as affordable housing and rental markets, instead of trying to accommodate or trying to take more money from the feds to spend on more shit that doesn't make sense, like the blanket rezoning or the green line to nowhere. Sure, these are great ideas, and I do believe in building the infrastructure inside of the city, but I don't believe that the city has the right to basically blanket up zone and to make their life a little bit more convenient, pander to a smaller faction of people, while 70% of the cities are up against that. And I think that that's why she kind of put Bill 20 in place, was for decisions like that. My problem with that is the blanket upzoning, when you could see that 70% of the population of Calgary came out, and the number of people that came out, 700 people to speak and 1,200 presentations. When you put a bill like that in place, and they say the same thing with police officers, if you draw your gun, you better damn well be ready to use it. She pulled out her gun and then showed that she had no intentions of using it. And I have a particular problem with that. And I think a lot of Calgarians do the same. So, besides, you have a list of things that you want to focus on, your 5 points. But it seems to be that it's more of a trust issue that you have with Smith than with the job that she's doing. You don't believe that she's going to get things done in the way that you want them done, or you don't believe that she's going to get them done at all. Because again, we do have an acceptable 4-year term for the premier. So when she says, I'm going to do these 10 things, and we understand that her term is 4 years, why are we rushing on some of these things? Why are we the ones that get set the priority instead of her being able to put the proper decisions in place to make these happen?
Well, the reality is, with any politician in any political party, I mean, if you're going to, again, make bold moves and change, you're going to do it pretty much in the first year of your term. And then that's basically what you can expect to see.
But that's again, that's your expectation. That's maybe not.
Much, you can look at that with any real political party. So anybody who has been following politics, it doesn't matter whether it's Donald Trump or Vivek Ramaswamy or what they say and what they do, and if you're going to make change, because you get back into campaign mode, right? You're not going to make any bold changes that are going to affect your potential to get re-election. It was actually Tim Hoven who actually put me onto a really great book called The Dictator's Handbook. And it really hit home for me, where politicians, and the only thing that matters to them, and it's about maintaining power, and it is about getting elected and then staying elected. And so the realistic outcome of that was truly, that if that's all that they care about, well, then that's where we need to apply the pressure. And it takes political will to make things happen. And when you're going to make a statement, especially something that, she may not have been truly, convinced on, or the conviction, or maybe somewhat controversial, you're not doing that in year 2, 3, or 4. You're doing that in the first year. Why? Because you need to give people time to realize, oh, okay, that was not such a big deal. It wasn't such a scary proposition. Look at how well it's worked out. Like the Alberta pension plan. If she had done that day one and just did it, signed on the line, made it happen, and by the time the next election came around, people, the seniors in particular, would have already been receiving Alberta pension plan checks and went, oh, wow, I'm getting more money. This was actually a really good thing. There was nothing for me to be afraid of. She couldn't do that now if she wanted to, because it would jeopardize potentially her reelection, right? So the trans issue, same thing. You know, if you're going to put policy like that into place, you need to go, you need to get it done. And it needs to happen early. It's not going to happen late. And that's just reality, because that's just politics, sadly. And so that's my thing. You know, yeah. Am I saying that she's not going to do it? Well, here's the thing too. You're making an assumption that I won't be here, you know, November 3rd. And the reality is, no matter whether it's Danielle, whether it's somebody else, whether it's UCP or NDP in 2027, you know, we intend to be here to apply the same kind of pressure, to call out the same kind of mistakes, and to apply conservative values and hold leadership to account. And people look at me and they go, well, Nadine, it's not just Danielle, it's MLAs. Hey, I'm happy to have other people apply the same amount of pressure to their MLA that I'm applying here. Here's the roadmap. By all means, go follow it. Because
now on the APP, if she'd have pulled the plug, then the feds really are in control of what we have. So we've all had a look at the report.
No, they're not.
And
the federal government is not in control of this at all. This is something totally within the provincial government.
But if we pull the plug, they say you get $0 back. They're the ones that essentially get to dictate.
No, they can't do that. Yes, it would end up in court. It would end up in court, there's no doubt, but they can't say you get $0. We are well within the right. It's in the CPP Act that we can leave at any time, and we are entitled to what it is that we have put in, plus our interest, the investments that we have earned, less the cost of the administration, less anything that we've received back in benefits. So the equation is there. So that is up for debate, and that would end up in court. I'm not disputing that. But the reality is Alberta could have left day one, started with absolutely nothing, and it would not affect Albertans at all. And at some point, we would still receive, even according to like Trevor Tome, 120 million, I think, or a billion is his low number. We would still receive that money at some point down the future. So, you know, that is not an excuse. And to say that the federal government has control over that, that's a misunderstanding. No, they don't.
No, and I think it was a misunderstanding in the way that I'd actually communicated it.
Seniors tomorrow.
So, yeah, again, it's something that would end up in court, but I mean, court doesn't turn on a dime either.
But we don't need a dollar. We don't need a dollar from the federal government to make this happen.
No, and I realize that we pay out $9 billion per year, we get $6 billion back, and I mean, I know the numbers. We've all been through the conversations, but I'm still saying, like, your expectation was year one or day one, or whatever that looks like, but that doesn't mean that it's not happening, and taking a reasonable approach to it. And your expectation is having everything done inside of the first year, but that's your expectation. That's not her mandate.
No,
so again,
and that's not my expectation. So if you look at the policies that we've put forward,
no, it is your expectation. You said that this is what she should have done, and that everybody else has done these things inside of the first year.
No,
well,
I never said that.
We elected her because she was different, and I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying, these are the things that you're on a timeline. You're on your own timeline, and you're expecting her to keep to your timeline.
No, I'm not.
Which I get.
So here's the thing. No, you're putting words in my mouth now. You're saying the Alberta pension plan expected that to happen in year one. No, I did not expect that to happen in year one.
Well, you said if she would have already done that.
You yourself were just critical and pointed out the fact that she completely backed off and left the void for the NDP to fill. Right? So that's the problem I have with the Alberta pension plan. She completely backed off, most likely at the request of a Pierre Poilievre. Why? Because it was impacting his campaign. And that's, again, why? You have to beg the question, why would you do that? But you yourself said she backed off. And in doing so, she has jeopardized. We went from a 52% support the day after she made that announcement down to 26. Why? Because she left the void that allowed the NDP and the unions to come in to fill that void with fear-mongering. And she has done nothing with it since.
Oh, no, and I still maintain my statements. What could have happened, but that doesn't mean once they got the report, or once they had the paperwork in hand, that they should have pulled trigger. Again, she has a mandate, and your ideas behind this are seemingly that they have to be on your timeline, or you're going to put the pressure on her. And I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm just saying that she has a period of time where she has this election. I'm not saying cut anybody any slack. I'm not saying back off of what we're doing. I'm saying, if we're looking at this, somebody, you're told that you have to finish a project in 4 years. And somebody comes to you in the first year and says, well, all you have is the foundation. Well, if the foundation is what's the largest portion of what has to be done.
But then take a look at the timeline for an Alberta pension plan. You have to give 3 years notice.
Okay.
So you have to give 3 years notice to the federal government. Okay, so let's back it up. So you've got 4 years. What do you got to do? You got to do something in the first year, right?
Or the second year, or
no, you've got to leave 3 years notice. So that means you had to have done something in the first year. So,
and even with where we're at, then it's.
But
she did state that she would hold this to a plebiscite. Am I wrong in that, or did she say that she was absolutely putting this through?
Now so here's the other thing. She put a law into place. Why would you have to put in Bill 2 at all? It's her prerogative to have a referendum. You don't need to make it law. That's just another obstacle that you have to overcome.
But isn't that a part of the transparency that you want to demand from her? Is that if she makes a law, that she's going to do something, and that law has to be.
She has the ability and the capacity to do that. You can have a referendum anytime you want. You don't have to add more laws.
Yeah, and I'm of the same mind that we don't have to. We don't have to do anything, but if it's in keeping with what she wants to see.
So does
she
it
puts
make
that into place.
Sheldon,
So,
I get where you're going with this, but I got a question for you. Does it make it easier to get an Alberta pension plan if you put an unnecessarily law in place that says you have to have referendum, or you don't?
No, that's not even a really good question, Nadine, because you already know the answer to it. No, it's actually a little bit offensive, to be honest with you, because you're asking a question where there is only one answer. And you're trying to, you can control a conversation like that, but it seems to me like you're getting into a defensive mode. So her idea was to have a plebiscite around the Alberta pension plan. We know that this isn't something that's going to happen overnight. Even inside of the 3 years, we make this 3-year thing happen. If she would have pulled the pin day one, 3 years later, then you say Alberta seniors would already be seeing the benefit. I'm not disagreeing with you. I support the Alberta pension plan. I also understand that government doesn't turn on a dime. And I also understand the situation that we're facing on a federal level. I do have a small appreciation for maybe the APP will have some impact on Poilievre, and we do have to look at big picture. But do I know that this could have absolutely been done? Well, if she said to voters, whether she's pandering to the wrong people or the right, that she was going to have a plebiscite, and that plebiscite has 4 years inside of her mandate to happen. And I think you're getting a little aggressive in expecting that this APP would be out by year 3, because it hasn't happened in the first year, and you're holding their feet to the fire when we're not even a quarter way through her. Well, we're just over a quarter way through her actual term.
So
that's all I'm saying.
My point on the APP is not that I expected it to happen within 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years. What I didn't expect to happen was to come out really strong and then to completely abandon it. And then to have people like Jason Nixon come out in private conversations and in public rooms say, hey, if Pierre Poilievre gets elected, the Alberta pension plan goes away. You can have Mitch Sylvester on and have conversations with him right now. I'm sure he'll be the first person to tell you that what he's hearing from Danielle on the Alberta pension plan is not pleasing, right? It's not just me. And it's not that I expected it all to happen in the first year. It's the fact that you come out very strong with a statement, you leave a void, and then you take actions like what she did with the Heritage Trust Fund and statements like that, which pretty much puts the nail in the coffin for an Alberta pension plan. Why? Because she handed it right into the hands of the people whose concern was she would turn it into a slush fund for pet projects for businesses that are risky. and it wouldn't be protected. And people don't understand the difference between an Alberta pension plan and a heritage trust fund. So it's activities like that that I'm calling out. So you want to make it about a timeline. It's not about a timeline. It's about the activities that have happened within the time we've currently had. And that, in my opinion, has made it very clear to me that, she has all but killed the Alberta pension plan. Whether it was intentional or not, I don't know. But unintentionally, through bad judgment, bad announcements, I can assure you this is going to be a major uphill battle. Why? Because of the things she has said and done and not done.
Yeah. Again, not going to disagree with you. All I'm disagreeing with is holding her feet to the fire inside of the first year. If she'd have set out, these are my first year priorities, and she faltered on that, then we have a conversation. But
Let's
she set out
talk
a
about
mandate.
taxes then, because she said she was going to do that.
Well, the taxes one's already been answered, hasn't it? I mean, we've already covered that there is going to be a tax rollback. And whether it's because of the pressure that we're putting on, or the pressure that you're putting on, or whether that was just something that they had to figure out inside of the budgeting, then that's what happened. So I mean, we can take credit for the decisions, we can take credit, and we absolutely still do need to hold our elected officials accountable. I don't disagree with that at all. Not at all. I'm not even disagreeing with you putting pressure on her for the things that she's promised over the period of 4 years for not having them done inside of the first year. I am not arguing with you on how badly I think they completely fucking botched the APP. I 100% agree with you on that. That's going to be a tough thing to win back. They've got a year, basically. Well, a strong 6 months of fear and smear fed out. Some of the other decisions, yes, I absolutely do question them. I 10 out of 10 do. Again, these aren't things that I'm disagreeing with. These aren't even things that other people are saying. I'm just trying to get behind, what the 1905 is drilling about, and holding you to the same account that you'd suggested that we should hold the government to. You can answer questions every bit as reasonably as the government can, and those are just the questions that I'm answering. So it's not I'm not a fanboy. I'm not an MLA. I'm not in this election. So I have nothing to lose here. I have nothing to gain except for a better understanding of what 1905 is, and same for the viewers and stuff, which has been great. I think everybody's kind of on board with that. How long it takes to put in legislation for the boys and girls things, yeah, I think that could have come out a little faster too. I really do. The DEI thing, I thought there was going to be an end to some of this woke shit that we're seeing. I think that has to be a part of the conversation as well. But again, these are all my expectations. Will I sit back silently? No. I mean, I've literally got a petition going to hand into legislation in the fall when they let back in. We all should be doing these things, shouldn't we? If they're not a part of the 1905, is to at least be doing the research on our own. And 1905 is what is one of the vehicles that people can use.
And I think that's really important. Thank you for bringing that up, because we are just one of the vehicles people can use. I don't expect people. You pointed out I can be very aggressive. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about this project. And
me too.
yeah, I really hide it well, right? But the reality is, Canadians in particular, we are so polite and we never want to offend anybody. And I don't set out to offend anybody or upset anybody. But the truth of the matter is if we do not apply the public pressure, if we're not a little bit aggressive right now, we're not a little bit bold in the actions that we take, we are really not going to get anywhere. So we really do have to be a little bit more forthright, a little bit more vocal, and a little bit more assertive in doing what we're doing. And there are other groups out there doing exactly their own thing in slightly different ways. I'm not here to say stop doing that. Oh my gosh, keep going. Press on the gas pedal is what I'm saying. We're going to get somewhere. But, 1905 committee, people have accused us now of being on the NDP side. I think you pretty much know that I'm as far from NDP as, we are from here to the sun. I am not, a socialist by any stretch of the imagination. I've got 6 years of recorded history, whether it be my YouTube channel or social media that has spoken to, my views, thoughts, and beliefs on things. And I didn't get involved in politics to be a politician. I got involved in politics to make change happen. And, oddly enough, I think 1905 committee from the outside being able to apply pressure is probably going to be more effective than ever had I been on the inside, where they do have a little bit more control over what you can say and do and when and how. So, but for other groups, keep going, keep doing what you're doing. 1905 is not the only group out there. There are other groups. I just think that right now in particular, we've got a lot of attention. I think both with Albertans themselves, but also in government. And I think we are seeing impact and having some highly effective change coming as a result of some of the pressure that we have been applying. And a large part of that has to do with the fact that Danielle has got a leadership review coming up here in November at the AGM. And, people, there are tons of rumors. I'm trying to remove her. Oh, all this. I'm WEF. Tonight was really about, I'm obviously.
That was actually my next two questions.
Yeah, right. So I'm World Economic Forum is what they're trying to say. And I'm an NDP supporter. And I think, the conversation is very blatantly clear that those two things are certainly not true. And it's not that I just say it, again, look at the actions, for 6 years. I mean, I had the courage to stand with Maxime Bernier in 2019 election when immigration was not a very popular subject. But with an economics background and as a chartered investment manager and understanding the implications of mass immigration, I certainly had the knowledge, the expertise, and the courage to go, this is the right thing to be promoting. And today, what? Immigration is like, oh, everybody knows that. Well, no, 6 years ago, not everybody knew that. I was called a racist. I was called all sorts of things. And that's okay. People don't understand. But you know what? I don't take the emotional response seriously. It's like, you know what? Go do your homework. And when you've done your homework, come back and give me the facts and we can have the conversation, the discussion. But
I have that same conversation every day. Facts and feelings are two really different conversations. If you want to approach this from a feelings portion, where we need to actually have more factual conversations, and this is going to go nowhere. So have a nice day and end the conversation there, because feelings will not change. They don't trump science. They don't trump math, and they don't really trump people's opinion. They can influence, but they don't change anything, right? Exactly. So you're not left. You're not trying to remove Smith. Sorry, go ahead.
And that's just it, right? Speak the truth. And that's my point. Like, you're seeing a lot of these posts that are coming out, and they're from the same small little group of people, like Paul Fisher and Sarah Nicholson, Sunshine Sarah, and a few others that, are spreading these rumors, which are just outright lies. But here's the thing, they claim to be conservative, but yet, is it conservative to make up lies and to manipulate and to deceive people like that? Like, I don't want to play those games. And I'm not doing that anymore. All I'm doing is calling out on our side the same bad behaviors that I would call out on the other side. And, conservatives seem to think that, well, if it's our jersey doing it, well, and we don't want to call that out, it's okay. And I'm like, no, again, from a principled perspective, I'm not going to make up a story or a lie about somebody so I can, spin a story to help win my argument. I'm going to go find the facts and present the facts. And sometimes when we do that and it's our side, people don't like that. And I can see why, right? It's like people are like, oh my God, you jeopardize Danielle Smith's leadership. And it's like, that's not my intent. My intent is to push her to do the right thing. And then, I know there are groups out there that are trying to have her removed. That is their sole purpose of existence. And that's unfortunate, but I hope she's paying attention. If anything, I'm like, hey, here's the flags. Here's the areas of concern. People are not happy. You've got some time to kind of right the ship here, get going in the right direction before the AGM.
Absolutely. Now on what Smith hasn't done, What has she done that you do support?
Well, like I
What
said,
do you think her achievements are so far in this first year?
yeah, I mean, she's done some things okay, like with respect to the trans legislation that she did when she came out with that. I was probably one of the first people to watch that and send her just even a personal note that said, hey, you know what? I support you on this. Not perfect, but I think it's a very reasonable first step. I even said to her, I said, I think this is a legacy moment. And guess what? Nothing has happened on it. That's the sad part. I think that could have been such a big moment for her. And then to have not followed through on it quickly, to show her commitment. And it is such a big concern for every Albertan. It truly is. So that's when I thought that, I was very supportive. She has done some things as far as, with respect to negotiating some deals, on with some of the other provinces, like, just something as simple as, hey, I can bring wine from BC now. To be a country means you should be able to cross the borders of each province and not have to worry about declaring booze or alcohol or, it's like, that's silliness. So things like that, break down some of the provincial borders. She has been very forthright about pushing back on Trudeau with some of the nonsense around the oil and gas industry. The oil and gas industry today can't even advertise the facts because it could be misconstrued by the federal government as, promoting oil and gas, and they could be fined for doing so. So she does do some of these things that I do support. And if you go on social media, there's still announcements that she puts out. Danielle Smith is not a bad person, right? I'm looking at, you have to separate person from premier. And, I think she has a big heart. She's certainly an Albertan. She cares. You saw that today in her announcement with the wildfires up in Jasper.
Actually, I haven't had a chance to see that one yet, but I am looking forward to it. But yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Go ahead.
She's almost in tears. She has a big heart. She does care about this province. There's no doubt. But she also, I think, has surrounded herself with a lot of yes people. And, when you don't have strong principles to fall back on, I think it's very easily to be misled and led astray a little bit from the priorities and to get disconnected from what the public and what Albertans truly want and need. So, I've got my fingers crossed. I'm hoping to see more announcements like what came out today, and that we're going to see, that we're going to see her follow through on the tax reduction, right? We're going to see her follow through on and change her story on immigration, right? I don't want to fast track people coming here to get into our police force. That's a very influential position. And I want to know that the people are coming here. I'd rather take our time with that position. And why not offer that opportunity to the men and the women, our young men and women that are here, born and raised in this province, right? I'm sure they would love to have those opportunities.
Well, I don't think that it excludes them, does it? Like I don't recall the policy saying we're not hiring Canadians for our police forces anymore. We're only hiring immigrants. Like it's the same thing with trades. Just because there is an incentive program for some people, it doesn't exclude everybody else. It's just more to try and incentivize.
It's DEI, it's quotas, and it has no place in any position.
I understand.
Albertans, so again, silly little things like halal mortgages. Why are we introducing Sharia law into Alberta? SOGI is still running rampant through the Albertan school systems. There's lots of things that need to be addressed that I haven't even brought up. COVID, we're still, HS is still promoting COVID shots for children. That should stop immediately. There is no excuse for that.
That's my petition.
Right? And I know, which is why I'm bringing it up. So, we support these types of things. They're not our policies that we're pushing right now, but parental rights, COVID, the education, the voucher system, which was such a great idea. Why haven't we followed through on some of those things? And I'm not, you talked about timelines. I could come out with 100 things that she said, but the big things for me is, She was about smaller government, smaller spending. We have the biggest government, biggest spending. Taxes are high in Alberta. People seem to think that we pay some of the lowest taxes. When you add up all the taxes that Albertans pay, no, we are not lower than most of the other provinces. Like our fuel tax is actually one of the highest, right? So you can't, property taxes, all of these things. When you add all of them together, we are one of the most expensive right now. So, climate change, there's another perfect example. These are the things that are very socialist and globalist in nature. And I think they don't have a place in Alberta politics. And Danielle is promoting them. And immigration, she did come out and say 10 million people in 20 years. That is more than what Canada brings in to Canada as a whole, proportionate wise. And we just can't sustain that. This is unsustainable. So please, let's get away from trying to buy votes and trying to buy political favor, and let's just speak the truth about what we can accomplish and what we can't actually do.
Makes a perfect amount of sense. We're at about the 2-hour mark here. Now, I know one of the biggest things that you'd said to me when we had our first conversation is that you reply to every email, you take every call back. So the place to find more information about 1905 is at 1905committee.ca. So that's COMMITTEE.ca. 1905 is the number, 1905. And there is your contact information on the site. And if people want more information, you're happy to have these conversations. I was actually impressed at how approachable you were when we'd met at I Am Albertan, how we discussed this and how we turned this around in a really short amount of time. And just because I question you doesn't mean I disagree with you. Yes, we do need to hold our leaders accountable. Yes, there are some things that we all need to see. Yes, they have botched some things. No disagreement on there. Just wanted to have a conversation so that everybody get a fair sense of what 1905 committee is all about. I know you're still going to face some questions on the lists, on the financial backing. You've stated you're not WEF, and I don't believe you are. So I mean, some of those things they may cause some concern with others, but at least they have an idea of those things. If there is anything else, that people have or that they didn't quite get out of the conversation here, would it be all right if I invited you back for a follow-up conversation over the next couple of months, maybe closer to the AGM, to see where we're at before we're walking into there? Would you be open to another conversation? I think it'd be good if we had a panel, right?
Great idea. And again, forgive the passion. It's not meant to be aggressive. It's not meant to be defensive. It is, and I'm from Newfoundland, right? The loudest person in the room won the conversation. So I know the volume kind of goes up and people go, stop yelling at me. And it's like, I'm not yelling. Honestly, I'm not. So you get to see who I am a little bit. And you know what, just because you and I am quite happy. I have lots of friends who we just completely disagree on a lot of things. And some of them are pretty big, important issues. That doesn't mean we don't like each other and we're not still friends, right? That's the truth of the matter. Is like we can disagree and still be friends. It's okay, right? We're not going to agree on everything. And my passion for what I'm doing, when you have a thick skin and you've got to take the kind of the blows, I think that some people have tried to make, I don't take them personally. It's okay. I don't like the lies. I like to call them out because they should be called out. But the truth is that, it's okay to disagree. If you don't like what I'm doing, it's okay. Say it, but you don't have to make up smears and lies, and personal attacks. I try very hard to stay away from that. I don't get caught up in that game, let's have an honest debate. And, things like this where, yes, I know these are things that are on people's mind, which is why I agreed to come on board. But you know what? I can't beat a dead cat to death. You know what? You don't like it. I get it. I understand it, but the reality, it is what it is, right? So you formulate your own decisions, and I'm not a perfect person by no means. I just happen to be very passionate. I've got a daughter, who's got to grow up in this province long after I'm gone. This is her home. My husband is a born and raised Calgarian. He comes from a generation. I don't let him out to have these conversations because, he is a born and raised Albertan through and through. You can just imagine how that conversation would go. And, my daughter, this is her home. And I just want to make sure that she has the same opportunities and your children have the same opportunities that mine will have. And that means we've got to fight for it now. There's no point in fighting for it in 3 years from now, 4 years from now, 10 years from now. There's issues. We've got to beat this climate change agenda because it's a lie. We've got to fix this LGBTQ issue because, I don't want kids. We're not helping children by doing this. COVID, right? If you think that the government had that much success and won't try it again, you're fooling yourself. It will happen again. And so we need to make sure we have the proper rules, regulations, the laws in place that protect individuals, freedom to make medical choices, right? So, that's why I'm here doing what I'm doing. And, I just, if you want to join me, 1905 committee is a great way to do it. If not me, go find another group. Right. And we have left much of the parental rights to other groups because they're doing it so much better than we are. Right. And that's their sole focus. So, good on them. And we're going to support them and you through those types of things as well. So
I like how you said that. If it's not us, go find another group. There's no options. Get off your ass. And if you're going to do it yourself, do it yourself. If you're going to find another group, find another group. The most important thing inside of that is it's important to be a part of the conversations. We're all seeing things inside of our city, inside of our province, and inside of our country that we never expected, we never voted for, we don't want, we don't like. And there's only one way that this changes, and that's by strong people like yourself that are willing to be the tip of the spear, educate people, get some momentum going, and help be a part of the change that you want to be, right?
Be the change you wish to see in the world, right? We can all sit at home comfortably on the sofa and wait for someone else to do it. The problem is it doesn't happen. So you know what? If you're going to be bold enough to complain about it, then be bold enough to do something about it. That's all I'm saying.
Perfect. Great way to end the call. Again, huge thanks for taking some time. Again, I hope that this really, quells all of some of the conversations instead of, especially inside of my community. People are either going to like you or they're not going to like you. They're either going to support you, they're not going to support you. But I think that we've answered a good majority of the questions that people have brought up, and we can go from there. So, I mean, the big idea is that, hopefully that they don't smear you. If they have any more questions of you, that they reach out and contact you, that they join you in your fights, or that they take your advice and find the vehicle that's best for them. So huge thanks for taking some time with me. And, of course, all the people that have logged in and listened to the conversation, or they're going to listen to it in future. I thank you for taking some time to learn a little bit about Nadine Wellwood and the 1905 committee.